My name is Joey Balistreri. Welcome to my channel. If you are an existing member of this community, I'm so glad you're here. And if this is your first visit to my channel, it's a great day for that because this is video number 7 in my series called Pearls Reimagined, Not Your Nona's Pearls. And I decided to do some purple pearls in today's project. So I have already completed the bracelet. I thought it was a good idea because I'm going to be making components and each one is different than the previous one. And I do want to do a necklace, so I thought that you would be able to see like where we're going with the designs. This is a really cool little cluster section that I love to make. I do some of my own head pins and mix up the elements in my piece, and I do this on a little piece of wire and actually make it into a component. And then I'm using some lamp work beads from my stash to create some of the components, and then I have a really cool technique for making these beaded rings, and I'm actually going to use one of the beaded rings to frame a piece of check glass. And then I have some electroplated quartz nuggets here that are so cool, and each one of these is really organic and it's going to look a little bit different, embellished with wire. And I've decided to do some of my check glass just plain as kind of like a spacer. And really I love this design. These are some like pentagonal beads that are from the Czech Republic, and I'm even going to be making these little spiral beaded beads out of wire and turning those into a component. And there's a little extender chain on my bracelet, and I'm not going to do this in today's video because I've done 2 videos on how to make a beaded pom-pom bead, and I'll link those in the description box if you did not see them. They are super fun to make, super easy. You literally can't mess it up, and you can turn it into a dangle like I've done on my bracelet, or there is a hidden loop in the pom-pom. If you want it as a component, you can connect things to either side. I'm using it as the final drop on my bracelet piece. So let's get going. I've done a little bit of the work ahead because this is really repetitive, and like what I like to do is sit and play with my beads and get just the sweetest patterns. So like on this one, this lamp work bead, I can show you, I think I have another one here. It has a pretty large hole, so I just play around with what's going to fit in there and make this secure and not make the bead like wobble on the wire. I'm using 20 gauge wire, but the hole is pretty large on this, so this is one of my patterns that I was really happy with. I've pulled in some really large disc spacers from my stash and some little they almost look like not gears. It's like a little flat spacer and like a washer almost, and I've just like pulled those in, and I have these beautiful little enamel bead caps. They're just a couple of colors that go with my color story here, and it's an Amazon find. I can link those below. And so what I'll be using, I had 3 strands of check glass pearls. I had 6mm, 4mm, and 3mm, and that's what you're seeing like on the ends of these components and flanking my lamp work beads and my little ring here that I'm going to do. And this is what I have left, so I'll be using those. And then I love the bargain bead box as well. I misspoke, but these electroplated nugget beads are from our bargain bead box last month. They are quartz and they are electroplated in this beautiful purple, and they have like that AB look to them where they shimmer, and each one was different. But I also am using a lot of pieces from my dollar bead box and dollar bead bag. These check glass nugget beads, these pressed check glass bicone beads, I love those. I am using my Softflex craft wire in 20 gauge and 22 gauge, and my Softflex number 2 gold filled crimp tubes. In my opinion, these are the best on the market. For the rings, you need a good crimp tube, and it really doesn't work well with a fold over or a flat crimp, and I'll show you why. I use my magical crimping plier, and I know that's a challenge for some people, so if it is for you, it could be that you need a higher quality of a number 2 crimp tube. So I'm just showing you that in case you're struggling and you want to try that. So let me go ahead and get this little component made. I am using my 1-step looper in 2 sizes for today's project. So for the components that are going to be connected directly to each other like this. I'm using the 2¼ millimeter one-step looper. It just gives you a little bit bigger loop, and it will make a chain more articulated and more fluid, and you know, the links don't get kinked as you wear it and as the piece is on you. And I'm just going to put my wire through the guide hole, because I do have a long piece of wire here, and gently, whoops, if I can hold on to it, I just gently close it. I was a little too gentle, and I just want to get, you can change loops easy with 2 pairs of pliers, but I just want to get, turn it this way, get my loop going in the same direction as the one I'm going to make, and close my tool here and let it make that cut, that loop, and I just center my thing, my component, my thing. Oh, I can't even talk properly. And then I'm just gonna make sure that my loops didn't get misaligned. And when I take that out, I have this beautiful little component, and it's ready to be attached in my necklace piece. So I'm gonna show you the other ones that I have done, because it's that exact same thing. Again, I just played with those beautiful enamel bead caps and my disc spacers, and I had a little collection of lampwork beads, and I know some of you are going to ask me where I got them, and I don't know. I've had them for years. It might have even been something I brought back from Italy. I honestly am not sure. But my advice is find something you love, because if you love the beads, this project is going to be beautiful to your eyes. I love these colors. This is a little bumpy lampwork bead, and again, I sort of fit these pressed glass bicones in this disc spacer, and I'm alternating these blues and purples and golds throughout the whole piece. And so I've done a few of these because I'll need quite a few to make my necklace. And then this is another one of my wire embellished electroplated nugget beads. And like I say, they're really free form and really fun and easy to make, because you can't mess it up. It ends up being whatever you make it to be. And these are so cool. Now, I did not do it on the bracelet, but I'm doing a little trick. I'm making a spiral, or like a spiral cage. I have a video on how to make these. If you didn't see that, I'll link it below, but we are gonna make one today. But I did something a little bit different. I'm using Delica seed beads from my Adornable Elements Beads of the Month. It was called Mountain Heather, and I just loved it. I have done so many projects with those beads. But I'm creating this little spiral twisty treat bead, and then I floated a pearl on the wire going through the middle, and I think it's so cool. It's magical. It looks like the pearl is suspended in this twisty little beaded cage, and it's just so charming. So I've done a couple of those, and I want to have 3 in my necklace, so we'll do one of these together. And I do like to even make my little spiral beads all different sizes. I love the texture, I love the movement, and I love the way you can alternate your colors. So I'm going to show you how I did that. And then I'm just playing with making some cool components, like with the pearls, and I did them all the same with my 2¼ millimeter one-step looper, just the way I showed you on that one. So it's just, that's why I did these ahead of time, because it's very repetitive. And as I said, I decided to do some of my check glass beads just really plain and not embellish them any further, just have them be a really beautiful blue link to space out some of my purple. And I have a few to do here. And then this is what my rings look like. And I used the pearls I had all 3 sizes. I had 6, I had 6, 4, and 3 millimeter. And so I'm doing these little rings, and I'll show you. These become connectors, they become embellishments, and I just made up a few. And so the cool thing, if you haven't seen this technique, it's one that I've done often on my channel. I really love it. I use scraps of my Softflex 49 strand bead stringing wire, just literally what I had left over. I keep a scrap bag of it, and I thread either my seed beads or my pearls or my micro-faceted gemstones, and an 11/0 metallic seed bead. I've used gold in these rings, and the cool thing is a number 2 crimp tube, when it is crimped with the magical crimping plier, is almost identical to an 11/0 seed bead. So you get this infinite ring. A non-jewelry maker would look at this and have no idea like how that little beaded ring is held together. And this just makes a wonderful connector. On my bracelet, I actually used it as a connector and a frame for this check glass coin bead, but I'm going to do some plain ones on my necklace. And so the other thing in this little pot is how I do my clusters. So I'm going to show you these little simple spirally head pins that I make. I'm using some ball head pins and these pearls. And so let me show you some of these components. I have this ring made, so I'll show you exactly what I do. Let me just back it down. As I said, you don't need to see me stringing pearls on a piece of bead stringing wire. So I did this ahead of time, but I am using 6 pearls and then an 11/0 gold seed bead and then 6 pearls and then my number 2 crimp tube. And so you could make your rings bigger. You just need an even number if it's going to be a connector. So if you wanted to go up to 8 beads, then a seed bead, then 8 beads, you could make a bigger ring. But for me, 6 and 6 is the sweet spot. And then all I'm going to do is thread my other end through the crimp tube going in the opposite direction and just pull both strands. Just pull. And you can pull it tight, because when I put my magical crimping plier in there, it's going to naturally kind of make some space, and that space is actually, you need it to do your connecting once you have your little ring made. So I'm just going to pull this tight and fit my magical crimping plier in there carefully so that I am sure that my number 2 crimp tube is centered in that well. And it looks like it is, so I'm going to give this a pull before I close the plier. I want it pretty tight. I mean, as tight as I can get it with the plier in there. Close the tool, and so I've pinched the 4 corners of that number 2 crimp tube, or made 4 corners. And then I'm going to go back in the opposite direction, and again, before I close the tool, make sure that I feel that it's right in the center of the well. If you don't take your time and get it in the center, you will mangle your crimp tube. So I'm just careful. It feels good. And now I'm going to close it in that direction and just keep the position of the magical crimping plier and just open and close while I go around the crimp tube. And when I take this away, I'm going to have a little tiny metallic gold bead, and it's so almost not detectable. It looks so very much like the 11/0 seed bead. So then you just want to get in here as close as you possibly can and snip. And this is just like it's like a beaded component that's magical. I love it. So I have another little ring, and so you see we have that little bit of space now that from the plier pushing these away. We need that because we're going to use this as a connector and connect here and connect over here. And I'm going to do this one on one of these. I'm going to do another bead frame with this one, I think. Okay. What else do I have out here to show you? Oh, I was going to show you how I do these little spiral head pins and get them through my pearls. I'm going to do my last 3 little pearls that I have here. I'm going to take, let's see, I'm going to use my 6-step bail making plier and use the smallest step. And if you like to make your own jump rings, or if you've seen me do it, this is going to look really familiar. I do want my coil here to be really neat. And so I'm just going to get a little coil going. And you see how I'm a little bit off there? Before I take it off my tool, I'll tidy that up. And sometimes I even will cut away my last coil. And I like to use my tool, because this is going to be a head pin, so I like to use my tool to kind of hold on to things and just get my little head pin going upward. And you know how you can I tend to be a fuss budget with my jewelry, so I'll sit and kind of play with a thing like this until I have it just right. But it looks really nice in a cluster. You can even like take your final little coil and pull it toward the center. This is 22 gauge wire. I use the 22 gauge for the pearls that have the really small holes. And the freshwater pearls, they had to have 22 gauge. The holes were really small in my cultured freshwater pearls. But I am just going to, let me see, I did do a gold seed bead in between. So this is for the spiral bead, all the ingredients for the spiral bead, but I have some of my gold seed beads out here that I've used throughout the project. These gold seed beads are the ones that are on the ends of my pom-pom bead, and they're the spacer beads, and I just kept them out here so that this will be consistent. So just a pearl. Like, this is so fun because I sort of determined that no two components were going to be duplicated. It's a very eclectic mix of beads and components, but unified by the color story. And it's just a really, really beautiful effect. So I have my little, because this is 20 gauge wire, I have my little component here. It just looks like that. And then I'm going to put a bend in the wire and take my round nose pliers and do a simple loop here, a really small one. And this sort of looks like the way you would make a wire wrapped loop, and I'm using a scrap of wire here, so it's a little bit short, but I'm just going to bring it around. It kind of looks like I'm about to wire wrap, and this is just the way that I do my simple loops by hand. And then I'll come with my flush cutters and just snip right where the wire touches the downward part. I don't know how to say that. And just close it and work hard in a little bit. And this little drop is ready. So that's what I did for some of these pearls, and I mixed up the ball head pins. So I will show you, my ball head pins are really, really fine gauge. They're either 21 gauge is like an industry standard for a lot of head pins, but they might even be more fine than that. And in order to get through the cultured pearls, I had to use my really fine ones, and they're just great for that. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one as well. Same thing, give it a bend and put my round nose plier in there and just do a little handmade simple loop. You don't really see these simple loops when you create your cluster, when you string it onto a cluster. So I don't worry too much about them all being exactly the same because they don't really get seen. And so I have a few of these made now, and what I was thinking is I'm just using up my pearls. What I was thinking is that this might be one little section on my necklace strung like that, and then this little guy will go into my cha-cha section, so if you will. Okay, I'm going to set those aside and we'll work on, I'll put that in there, that's going to go in that, and let me show you how I did the little frame. So once your ring is made, then it's right back to the same. Like I said, this is really repetitive. It's using the same techniques to get all the components made with all different looks. So I'm just putting a simple loop in my plier, and I'm going to thread on my check glass coin bead and make another simple loop in this side. So like that's kind of the basis for all of these components. Okay, if I have an odd shaped bead and I can't close my tool all the way, I stop because I don't want to break my bead, and I'm going to be opening this anyway to add it to my ring. But I did get my loops misaligned, and I'm not happy about that. But this is a good chance to show you 2 pliers and a small little twist, and we're back on track. So all I'm going to do is open this simple loop, and as I said, even number of pearls here, and I'm just going to put it in between the 6 pearls. And you have a little malleability because it's 49 strand bead stringing wire, so you can do a little bending to get it in right there. In between the 6 pearls on that side, and now I will close it really well, work hard in a little bit, and then I'm just going to get over on this side and open this loop and just wiggle my little circle in here. 1, 2, 3. Just make sure that you connect it in, in between, and close this side really well. And this side, is a little challenging because now everything is connected. But just get in there if you can and make sure your loop is closed really well. Let's see if I can, I don't know if I'll be able to work hard in this one very much, but yeah, a little bit. And so that cool little bead frame is done. Isn't it beautiful? And it it's movable. It's like an interactive piece on your jewelry, on your necklace or your bracelet, because it will spin a little bit inside the bead frame. So it's actually something you can play with. I just think that is so pretty. And then I really like doing some plain check glass as well. And let's see, let's do a spiral bead next. I have that ready. And so for the spiral bead, it is amazing, but my 11.0 Delicas actually fit on 20 gauge wire, but you could do your spiral part on 22 gauge wire if you think that's easier. And so what I'm going to do is come to one end, and this time I'm going to use my one-step looper in the smallest size, in the 1.5 millimeter loop, and I'm going to put a loop on one end and warm and straight. And I do want to start with a pretty straight piece of wire because it makes the spiraling bit easier. And now I'm just going to repeat the pattern. Where is it? I'm going to repeat the pattern. I used all 3 of these colors, and I did, let's see, 5, and I just kept switching. I did 5 of each color and just kept switching. So I'll show you what it looks like. It can be random even. You just kind of create the look you want. So 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, isn't that incredible that those really small beads will just slide right onto 20 gauge wire? It's really cool. And I do like using the thickest gauge of wire that my beads will hold, just to add strength and quality to my work. So I'm just going to fill this up. That's 3, doing sections of 5, alternating these colors. Okay, and you can really make this as long as you want. Your finished spiraled bead, will be bigger the longer. You'll have more spirals the longer that you do it. And I did this one a little bit longer than the other 2 that I've made. I like to vary the sizes in a piece like this because, as I said, no 2 components are alike. The unifying factor here is my color story, but I like the eclectic mix of everything else, very artisan. And obviously you look at these pieces and they are not machine made, so I love that. And so what I've done here is just just started the pattern over. The dark purple, the light blue, the lilac purple, and repeat to my desired length. And I just made sure that I have 4 of those, and I'm ending in a blue. So now you can do this a couple of ways. You can leave this end open if you want to, and try to do your spiral with this end open, but I don't do it that way. It gives you a little bit more flexibility as far as how much empty wire you need to make the spiral. Otherwise, it's guesswork. And I guess I've made so many of them, I'm pretty good at guessing. I usually leave myself about 1 inch and then do my spiral. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and close this end off with another simple loop. So same thing again, I'm going to come in with my one-step looper and just make sure that I have, about 1 inch of space there before I put my simple loop on. So that should be good. And I will tell you, doing this with seed beads is really forgiving. When I make these spiral beads with a more expensive bead, like a microfaceted gemstone or the glass pearls or something more expensive, you know, I'm more careful, but I can actually break a seed bead off of here if I need the extra space on the wire when I spiral, and I'll show you what I mean. You know, if I need to crush a bead to get a little space, I'm okay with doing that. So I go ahead and close off my end. So I'm not struggling to make my spiral, and I have all this space, and it's more than you think it will be when you make these, because as you do the twisting eats up length of wire and it pushes your seed beads together. So you can use just about anything. You could use like you could use a chopstick if you have that. You can use a pen, but I have this fancy mandrel, so I'm going to use that. And this is really cool, and I use the really skinny one for this smaller, tighter spiral on my bracelet, but I'm going to use the larger one because I do want to float a pearl in the middle of this spiral. So I'm just going to get it started by putting the loop on the mandrel and putting my thumb over it and just get my first little bend in there. And then as you spiral, you want to kind of push your seed beads up, and these are glass seed beads on, you know, a metal mandrel, so you have to be gentle because you're bending the wire with the seed beads. But as I said, it's a seed bead. If you break one, it's not the end of the world, and there have been times, in fact, where I broke it on purpose just to make an extra spiral if I wanted it. So I'm just like pushing my seed beads down as I spiral, and it doesn't even really matter how great your spiral looks because you're going to do some more maneuvering and some more hand sculpting when you're all done. So just get your spiral in there, and there's going to be plenty of opportunity to change things up. And it looks like I even misjudged on how much extra space that I needed on this bead, and that's okay because it's better to have extra than not enough, because what I can do is just pull this out and I can tighten this up, cut this loop. Now it really was acting as a stopper, and then I can just put another loop in there, tighten up my seed beads and just put another loop in there. So what I want to do now is get these loops. I want to like hand sculpt my spiral, but I also want to get these loops so that I want them closed so that my little delicas don't escape. But I also want to get it so that it is in the middle of my spiral. So I'm going to grab a hold of it and just pull this in. So I'm tightening up my spiral. Just going to pull it in, and I'm looking to see that this loop ends up kind of in the middle of my cage. I'm going to work on this end a little bit. So I'm going to face my loop down like that, and then just get a hold of my spiral with my pliers and do a little hand sculpting and just maneuver it to the center. And here's where you can tighten your spiral, do some hand sculpting, you know, until you're happy with it. So I'm going to stop there to show you. So that I will need to put a piece of my 20 gauge wire right through the center of my spiral. And so I can kind of test and see. This one definitely is not in the center. I need to move it a little bit more. Can you see that? And this one maybe back a little bit. So like I said, a little bit of hand sculpting, so you don't really have to stress about your loops. Just do what you have to do to kind of get it centered. And this one I want to move it back a little bit. And I'll check again. So I don't know if you could see, but delica beads, they always want to escape through the loop if there's any tiny little space, and you do make space as you're twisting, so you do have to go back and kind of close up, make sure your loops are closed really well. So let me get it on my wire again. That looks pretty good. Now the wire can help guide you to like if you want to pull your spiral out a little bit more, if you want to push it in a little bit more. That looks pretty good to me. That looks really good. Okay, and now we're going to get the pearl inside. So what I want to do first is take that same 2 1/4 millimeter one-step looper, and this way each one of my components has an identical loop on the end. They all match perfectly. And I'm going to use these spacer beads, and I'll show you why I chose these. I just played with all my components, but this pressed glass bicone just fits, like the little bicone point just fits perfectly in that little disc spacer, and I just like the way that it looks. So I'm going to put my wire through, and then I'm just going to like pop my pearl inside my little cage, and then this is where it might be a little thing you have to like fiddle with, but I've done all of them.
It's
just get the wire through the hole of the pearl. And then I'm going to put my wire through this end. And you know, before you finish making your little bead, you can have a look and see, like, I don't know if I like the bead cap in there. It doesn't look good. I think I'm going to take the bead cap off. And like I said, there's a lot of hand sculpting, and each one of these, like, I like doing them different, even different lengths. But I like the way that looks. And so I'll finish this end the same way. Another one of these disc spacers and another pressed glass bicone. That looks so great. I just love these little beads. So I guess I did 3 of them that are pretty much alike for my necklace part. And then I'm going to repeat the same thing with my one-step looper. So this is now ready to connect. And the cool thing about these spiral beads is, you know, a lot of times I say to back this away like a millimeter or so, but you have a little, like, let me see if I can show you. You have a little spring action in this. So you actually can push this in and, you know, make a nice, like, really nice tight loop, because your spring gives a little bit, so you won't damage your beads. They're so much fun. When I first did the first video on this, I felt like making your own spiral beads should come with a warning, because once you do one, it's addictive. You just want to keep doing them. They're so much fun. It's easy stringing. It's very free form wire, and look at the result. It's so beautiful. And this is another cool little thing to do, to like float a bead, or you could float several beads or crystals inside. It's just such a beautiful component and very artisan. Like, I can't imagine saying, oh, a machine made that. It doesn't look machine made. So I love that. I have a few of those ready to go in my necklace, and so that can go in there. All of these little components are ready to go into my necklace project. And what I might do is go ahead and start connecting things so that I can see you know, how much more I need to make, if anything. So let me have a few things over here. Let me put these in this dish and clean up a bit. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did for this little cluster section. I am going to take my 2 1/4 millimeter one-step looper, because this is my connecting point. So everything on my necklace and bracelet has this really great looking loop. And I do leave the other side open until I have strung all of my pieces on, and then I can decide how much I want to push them, you know, push them together to make the cluster, if that makes sense. So like, I strung all of these on, and then I pushed them up to the look that I wanted before I made the last loop. So otherwise, if you do the little piece of wire with the 2 loops first, it's a little bit more difficult, because you have to like keep making components. So I'm just going to do, this is what I was saying about my freshwater pearls, my cultured pearls. The holes are extremely small in these. So these head pins are perfect for this. If we're working with pearls, we usually do need smaller stringing material. And I'm just going to do that same thing that I've been doing. Just make a really small, simple loop. But I will link these fine gauge ball head pins in the description box because they really do work well for this type of a project. Okay, let me dump all of these out of my little dish. This is what I have made up for my cluster. Don't know how that little guy got in there. And I think, let's see, do I need to make more? Let's try that. We'll string that on. So that's how I do my clusters. I'll start out with a piece of wire and a simple loop, and then I'll just string things on until and see if, you know, how I feel about it. And I did these just using some of the Delica seed beads, same exact technique, that same ball head pin, and I just did a few of these just to add that little bit of texture. Let me show you. That's what they look like in. It's just really cool. It just adds a little bit of texture. So I'm just threading these on at random and alternating my pearl beads with my little stick bead components. I love minimalist stick jewelry anyway, and so it was really kind of fun to make a few. And then what I'll do is push it up and see how it looks and see if I'm happy or if I want to add more. And I don't have any more of these pearls, and I was thinking that I wanted to use these 3 for a little section on my necklace. Let's see. Those 3, I think I am going to save those for my necklace. So what I could do is add in a couple of my check glass spy cones to this cluster. That would be gorgeous. So I'm going to get another piece of my 22 gauge wire, and I think I'm going to do 2 spiral head pins. Okay, got a couple of little bicones done, and I'm going to add those in to my cluster and have a look, see how it looks. Oh, that's really pretty. It's full, and I've got a lot of different shapes and textures in there. So I'm just going to get us another simple loop in here. I'm going to get a hold of my first one and come back with my 2 1/4 millimeter one-step looper, and I am going to push, like I'm going to push all these little cha-chas together. And you don't have to commit to the loop, like you can maintain control here, like gently close it and see if that's going to do what you want it to do. And I think I want it even a little tighter because it's going to be on a necklace. And then I'm just going to let the tool make that cut for me. And it's got a lot of stuff on here, so it wants to flip out, but that's okay. I get a hold of it and just get that simple loop in there. And of course, I'll probably have to go tidy it up because there was a lot of things in the way. So when I connect this to my necklace, I won't be opening these loops again. I'll open the other component that's going to connect to it that's a little less complicated. Just going to make sure they're closed. And there's my little cha-cha bead. Like, it's so cool. And you know, you don't really see the loops, and you just get this really interesting section. So I think I'm going to start connecting my my pieces, my components that are already made. I do have a couple more pieces of lamp work here. I have plenty of beads left. I did want to show you before I start connecting, I have one of these done for my necklace, and I know I want at least one more and maybe 2. So let me show you what I did for that. I am going to use 20 gauge wire on that. I'm going to take a pretty long piece. I mean, my wire never goes to waste. I don't like to work off the spool, but my wire never goes to waste because I use the one-step looper. So even if I have a little piece like this left over, that is 1 or 2 more smaller components. So I do not mind having a little bit of extra wire. So what I'm going to do is come down and get my first wrapped loop in here. So I'm going to get a hold of my wire, And you know, I always take a moment to warm it and smooth it. Put a 90-degree bend in my wire, and I want to make a wrapped loop that's around the 2¼ millimeter size, the same as my simple loops. So I'm going to get that in here. And I'm going to do like 3 wraps. I usually do 2 to 3. And if I feel like it wasn't neat enough, I'll put my plier inside the loop and just make everything nice and tight. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist when I'm working on a piece. That's just my style though. If you're more the messy wrap and you're, you know, happy with it, if you're happy with it, you're the artist. So, you know, I hope it doesn't drive you crazy that I sit and fuss with things. I try to edit it out because it feels, you know, a little bit boring to watch someone like do what I'm doing right now. But okay, so I have my loop in there, and I'm going to choose, these were all so different. I think I'll choose this long one, and I'm going to put this side in because it has an angle. They're all, each one of these nuggets was so different. And so then I'm going to come to this side. So at this point, this looks like a normal wire wrapped loop. I'm going to get a hold of it, 90-degree bend. As you see, I have a lot of extra wire, but that's because I want to have plenty to work with to embellish the nugget. I'll do my best to get in this odd shaped bead and get a wrapped loop done. So now here's where I'll start thinking about where I want to lay my wire. I got to get a couple of wraps in here and really just wrap down to the nugget. The wire's a little bit long. It's hitting the camera lens. I apologize for that. I hope you can still see what I'm doing. So my bead is starting to be stabilized. And so now I want to just start looking at the natural path of the wire. And I think that this will be really pretty coming down the side and just looking for like a natural place to lay the wire on the nugget. And like I said, it's not an exact science because each one of these is different. And you know, I encourage you to try this even if you're not very secure about your own wire working, because if you don't like it, like I'm quite happy with the way that's looking, but if I didn't, I could unwrap it and, you know, go again, so, or cut it away, you know. So I encourage you to like play with this. I'm going to come in with my hands now and just get over here and wrap this around my initial loop. And now I want to look for a place to where it's going to flip around on my necklace, but I want to look for a place to lay a little spiral like I've done. Let me show you this one again, like I did on this one. It's just so cool. No matter which way this turns on the piece, there's embellishment with the gold wire, and I'm going to do something similar. So let's see. I also think that I want the more flat side of this bead, so I'm going to just gently turn my loops with 2 pairs of pliers so that my nugget bead is more laying flat when I connect it to everything else. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. And now I'm going to just bring this around right here, and that's going to be way too long of a spiral, so I'll trim it off right about there and take my round nose pliers. And I'm just going to move this up a little bit, and I'm just going to spiral, really start at the very tip and just make this as neat and tight of a spiral as I can get. Just in small increments, just push this against my finger. I'm going to spiral right down to my nugget bead. When I get as close as I want, I'm gonna just figure out where I want to lay this. That looks pretty good. If I want to snuggle wire to a fragile bead, I'll use my nylon jaw pliers, get it nice and tight. And so that is really, really pretty. I might do a third one. I have two for my stringing. And this is a solid brass chain that's plated and then e-coated for anti-tarnish. And I got this from Purity Beads. I met this company at a bead show. I link them a lot because I love the high quality of their metals. I mean, nothing's as good as the precious metals, but this is, you know, long lasting and has a nice weight and great quality. So I'm going to just set some of these things aside so that I can lay out my pattern here for the way that I want to connect all my unusual artisan components. Put my bracelet here for inspiration, although I don't want it to be, you know, I don't want it to be too matchy, but we can still look at like the way the bracelet was connected. Okay, let's see, where do we want to start? I think I'll start with one of my cage beads. I'm just going to lay this out here. Okay, I am going to start connecting, and I'm going to start right here in the middle and just work my way out, just connecting each of my simple loops. The wrapped loops are on the nugget beads, so when I was laying this out, I had to make sure that I had a simple loop on either side of those nugget beads so that I can connect. Just make sure that every loop is closed and work hardened really well. My little spiral beads, so exciting. I love them so much. And here's where we have to make sure that we're opening a simple loop when we get to one of the wire wrapped loop components. And same thing for the last one. Oh my goodness, you guys, this is so pretty. I mean, it is just so stunning. It really is not your Nona's pearls. It really is pearls reimagined, because you don't really see a purple pearl necklace because of the way they're done. The pearls floating in the spiral cages and the pearls in the pearl rings and the little natural pearls in the cluster sections, and it is just absolutely stunning. You just don't look at it and see like a traditional pearl necklace. And what I was thinking is to go ahead and attach my chain right to my final simple loops. And I love a necklace that's really just pop over your head. So if this is the right length for me, I may not even cut my chain in the middle. I might just leave it as is and have it just be a super simple chain that I just pop over my head. I have these three little guys that I wanted to put on a jump ring and have them dangling somewhere. So I'm going to do that. Let me get my chain attached here. My gosh, you guys, I love it so much. It's about 28 inches long, so I am not going to put a clasp. This is easy on, just a pop over your head chain. I love this so much. One of the things I love is that all these textures and all these different shapes and these unique components and making some of my own beads. All of that is hanging on me low enough that I can actually see the beauty. You know, when we wear necklaces, other people see them, but we don't always get to enjoy them. But this way, I get to enjoy all of these really cool, like the lamp work beads. It's such an eclectic, marvelous, delightful, delicious mix of handmade beads, nugget beads, check glass pearls, lamp work beads. There's some enamel bead caps. There's a little bit of pressed glass in here, you know, the quartz, the cultured purple pearls. I mean, this is absolutely delicious, even some coin beads, and I just love it. I really was going to just make a bracelet, but when I was working on the bracelet, I just was loving, I wanted to do more. So I said, you know, I just wanted to keep going because it's just so beautiful and delightful. So one last thing, I'm just going to find a little spot to make a little 3-prong charm. Just kind of see how it hangs, where I want to put it. I actually think that I'm going to put it up here on one of these links, sort of asymmetrical. And I am going to take a gold-filled jump ring, and I'm just going to thread these 3 little like stick components that we made. I'm just going to thread them on a jump ring and just add it as an embellishment. Let's see, I want to do a small one. This is the 3mm, and then the 4mm one in the middle, and then another 3mm. And I'm going to come right above where my last bead is connected and just close that jump ring really well. And so I have these little, I just am crazy about the movement and the texture in this piece. I know this isn't the best way to see it laying on my mat, so I will put this on Gabriella Eva or one of my mannequins, but this was an absolutely delightful project. It's another one that you can't go wrong because however you design it, whatever your components look like, that is what they are. But I am just crazy about the movement and all the different textures and the color play in this, and I just felt like in this series of videos it was time to do some colored pearls because I love the classic traditional, you know, the pearl white, so to speak, but for 2025 and thinking about things being updated and modern and contemporary, dyed pearls, you know, just seemed like the way to go and perfect for going into spring and summer to have the pearls with the color. And they're a little bit less formal in my estimation as well. So for jeans and a t-shirt, you know, I think a little bit less formal is a great thing, and you'd probably wear it as, you know, maybe a little bit more. I don't know. I think maybe I will. So I thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll subscribe to my channel and tap the bell notification and a thumbs up, all the things. That really does help support the community and support my work. It doesn't cost you anything. And also check the description box because when I edit, I will put links to anything that I have used. I don't know where I got the lampwork beads, but the check glass pearls are from the Dollar Bead Club as well as my other check glass. I use some things from Amazon, some things from Bargain Bead Box, and I'll link the other videos if you need to see this technique for making a pom-pom bead. I was thinking about doing that on my necklace, but I have a video where I did a pom-pom as the drop on the necklace, and I wanted to do that differently. So I'll link a couple of those videos, and I have more to come in this Pearls Reimagined, Not Your Known-as Pearls series. So I do hope you'll tap the subscribe button so you don't miss those notifications. I am having so much fun designing jewelry for this series, and I hope it's been fun for you guys too. Thank you so much for watching. I hope everybody's safe and well and having fun on your beading mats. Ciao, friends.